Privilege, advantage. You say privilege, white people instantly go in 40 directions, shut down. Advantage, what does this mean, this idea of white privilege? We talked about it before, but this is something, and Russell, we were talking back in the green room about, I just did diversity training for a very large bank in Arkansas, mostly white leadership. To their credit, they brought us in, they wanted to learn this, but talking about privilege, advantage, there's so much about that is understood, that is misunderstood, that is leveraged both for good or bad. And you as an African American have had to deal with this real life, lived it out, experienced the systemic effects of racism. Talk to us about privilege. What is it? What is it not? How should we understand that and embrace this concept?
Great. Real simple question to answer. So privilege itself isn't good or bad. It's a product of a culture or a space for which you live in. And it can fall on it manifests itself in multiple ways. If you understand the intersectionality of identities, there's a privilege that us three have that this one doesn't, you know what I mean? So there's a male privilege. There's privilege that can lay out in any way. It just has to do with the way for which culture organizes itself, right? So it's not good or bad, it's just in relation to the culture. Secondly, it's something that can work in multiple ways. It's something that works either through the individual or also systemically. An example is if you were to be at an airport, right, and you know that conveyor belt thing that you stand on and it just kind of carries you forward, right? You know what I'm saying? And there's some people that have sense enough to know to get on it and walk, right? And then there's other person that kind of stands there with their carry-on right next to them. You can't go past them. I hate that guy, right? But that is a picture of how privilege works structurally. You're not doing anything to make the thing go forward. You didn't set that system up. The system was set up already. You just stood on it and it's carrying you forward, right? So that's a picture of privilege, whereas there's only so much space in that. The rest of us are in the in-between thing, walking, right? Trying to keep up with you that's just standing, right? But we're both going forward. That's a picture of privilege. Now, how that plays out racially in relation to at least our country has a lot to do with history, the concept of the American dream, this idea that if you overpower somebody, then obviously you're the superior species, right? So if I can overpower you, then that means that you should have toughened up. So that's your fault that this didn't work out, right? So it's a concept of power which says that if I just work hard, it's the dream. If I work hard and stick to it and just tough it out, then I will succeed. So it means that if you're not succeeding, it's because you're not working hard, right? We'll say that to the gardener outside, right? Tell me he's not working hard, right? So it comes from that sort of paradigm that drove the concept of manifest destiny, that drove people into the Black Hills, right? That drove them in there to look for quote unquote gold, because you're supposed to just go get yours. And if I can't get it from you, it's because you were stronger than me. But if I'm stronger than you, then that means I have a right to this gold, right? So if that doesn't happen, then inherently, like a person just doesn't wake up and say, I'm going to be participating in self-destructive behavior, right? So when you look at communities of color that haven't received the quote-unquote success that that the dominant culture would perceive, you would say, well, clearly something's wrong with you, right? Because there's an assumption that all things are equal. And if all things are equal and you're not succeeding, it's because something's wrong with you, right? So that's a biological problem. That's the very basis of supremacy, because clearly you're biologically inferior to me. If you just work hard, you're supposed to succeed, right? So privilege says that that's not the case. I'm working just as hard as you, sometimes harder, but I'm working in a system that rewards what you have and does not help what I have.
Very powerful. What a great illustration, Jan. No, that's serious. That's good stuff. Okay, because we want to keep it moving, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond. So
Okay.
a white person actually dealing with privilege here. It seems that what I have heard, talk to people about, tell me right or wrong answer, better way to say this, but it's about, at the end of the day, understanding privilege, acknowledging privilege, and and then trying to leverage whatever measure of privilege you have to not just give a man a fish or teach a man a fish, but to help others on the pond. We were talking about this with this group, and a white man came up to me after he goes, that's a little scary because if I help others on the pond, that means my pond is a little less.
Yes.
I said, well, hey, maybe that's true, but think about it like this. Now you have 2 ponds you can fish in. You see what I'm saying? So is that right? 30-second answer. Understand, acknowledge, leverage.
I'd say
what do we do with that?
Yeah, understand, acknowledge, leverage, but then I'd say there's a higher call that Jesus gives us, which is give away.
Yeah.
So you take power. It's one thing to leverage power, but how about losing it?
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if in a relationship, like a good example is like in a marriage or in a relationship, or even with your children, right? Think about what that says to your son, your daughter, when you say, I'm not just going to use my rights as a parent or as an adult to do things for you, but what if I'm going to lay it down for you, right? And is that not what Jesus did for us? All power laid down. So that's my challenge to you. Don't leverage power. How about give it away?
That's absolutely right. Remember, we talked about that in Atlanta. The theological background. You can clap. Go, keep going. We're just going to keep moving. That's all. But the theological background is Philippians 2. This is what Christ did. He laid down power, privilege, and position to come and give it to us. All of my years, I'm like, what does it mean he emptied himself? What did he empty himself? People mystify that, spiritualize it. But at the end of the day, everybody in this country is fighting to attain or maintain power, position, and privilege. To your point, Philippians 2, what you do, you give it away. You let it go, come down, and that's what Christ did. Power, position, and privilege. That's why we're called joint heirs now with Jesus. He gave us power, position, and privilege when we had none. Great point, good. All right, Tasha.